Today, we are diving into a verdict that gets delivered with the force of lightning. And look, this isn't just some story, it's a real philosophical showdown. It's about what humanity could be versus what it's so often settled for. This is the verdict on The Last Man.
Everything really hinges on this one single phrase, a philosophical thesis made flesh. I mean, let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about a person who just has an idea. We're talking about a person who is the idea, walking, talking, and, yeah, with the power to literally reshape the world based on its own internal logic.
So that brings us to the big question we're tackling, right? What really happens when an idea, a philosophy, gets the power of a god? What happens when you can't debate it anymore? You can only obey it or get out of its way. Well, let's find out. To really get the verdict, we've got to understand the judge first. And our story kicks off with his creation, an origin that was born from a world that had, kind of lost its way. Okay, so picture an age that's just suffocating. It's buried under the weight of its own comforting delusions. And in this world, there's this brilliant scholar, a kind of Faust of the mind, who sold his soul not for power, but for pure knowledge, and he finally just breaks. And in that very moment, with a clap of thunder and a single magic word, something brand new is born. So the world, it thought it was creating a super soldier, just another controllable weapon for its petty wars. But what actually walked out of that gamma-fueled cage was not a weapon. Oh no, it was Wotan, the Overman. And he wasn't a slave to be ordered around. He was a living, breathing philosophy with the power of a god. So, this new god, he comes down from his glorious isolation to take a look at the world he was supposedly created to save. But what he finds is, well, it's definitely not what he was expecting. He walks right into the bustling heart of human society. Not a battlefield, but a marketplace. And what does he see? He sees humanity not striving, not reaching for the stars, but just huddled together. And they're worshiping a totally new kind of God. Total, absolute security, comfort. And this is what humanity has become. This is the last man, a being who's not defined by ambition, but by total apathy. The struggle, the growth, that essential drive to become something more, all of it has been traded in for the sweet, numbing oblivion of just being comfortable. So here it is, the central conflict laid bare. On one side, you've got the Overman. He's all about the will to power, that deep, innate drive to grow, to struggle, to overcome yourself. And on the other side, the last man, who's traded all that in for total security and a quiet life. And let's be clear, these two forces, they just can't coexist. And right into the middle of this standoff, a third player steps onto the stage. A tempter who is just perfectly suited for this modern world of comfort and easy compromises. Yeah, forget the horns and the pitchfork. This is Mephistopheles in a slick business suit standing in the shadow of some giant corporate tower. And he gets it. He completely understands the desires of this new humanity. And here's the deal he offers Wotan. It's a simple, chillingly cynical pitch. Humanity doesn't really want freedom. They want safety. So he says, just give them the comforting lie that you're their savior, and they will gladly, happily be your slaves forever. So this is the moment of truth for Wotan, isn't it? Is this living embodiment of self-overcoming actually going to accept a crown? Is he going to agree to be a shepherd for a flock that has zero desire to even try to climb the mountain? So, what's the answer? It's a no. But it's not a quiet no. Oh no. It comes as a verdict, a judgment that is about to shake the very foundations of the last man's comfortable little world. Wotan looks at the last man, this being who has become so small he's forgotten to even ask, what is a star? And he feels absolutely no pity. Instead, he feels what the Source calls the Dionysian truth of existence. That's that raw, chaotic, creative, and destructive life force, the very energy that the last man has traded away for a safe and boring life. And then he speaks, and his words are a flat-out rejection of the role everyone wants him to play. I am not a captain for your stagnation, he says, nor a protector for your cowardice. And here's where we get to the really shocking, paradoxical heart of his verdict. From his point of view, to save the last man in his current state, well, that would be the cruelest thing he could possibly do. It would mean blessing their decay and locking in the end of all human potential forever. So instead, he declares his own law. the law of the earth itself. He says the whole point of life isn't to be safe, it's to be in a state of perpetual self-overcoming. The goal isn't to preserve what you are, but to surpass what you are. Okay, this brings us to the final, decisive act. Wotan has delivered his verdict. But these aren't just words. He's about to make his judgment very, very real. And what he does next is an act of absolute rejection. He doesn't fight them, he doesn't try to rule them or even teach them. Acting with a kind of freedom that is way beyond their ideas of good and evil, he simply turns his back and walks away. He leaves them with one final, absolutely brutal command. Not, I will save you, but a challenge that puts the entire burden right back on their shoulders. And for the comfortable, for the fragile, this command, well, it's got to feel less like a call to action and more like a death sentence.
And this is when it all clicks. His purpose was never to be a savior, it was to be a signpost pointing to what lies beyond comfort. He is the next step. And as he turns his back, he leaves even that cynical Mephistopheles watching in. It says genuine unease, realizing he just tried to make it deal with a force of nature.
And the source material leaves us with this final, truly haunting image. See, the Overman isn't malicious. A walking mountain doesn't hate the little villages in its path. But just by its very nature, by its sheer existence, and the incredible weight of its steps, it will inevitably, absolutely shatter the small, comfortable worlds of those who chose to stay below. And that is a chilling thought to end on.